James didn't look quite like himself, and the TNT broadcaster suggested King James looks tired. Richard Jefferson said on Fox Sports Ohio that LeBron was sick before Game 4. Quote, "I know he won't talk about it, so I'll give my big guy a shout. Darren Williams missed shoot-around this morning because he had a little bug. Really lethargic, had no energy, and I think that's what Bron had. And sometimes these little bugs can go around." Meanwhile, Will Power back with us. Stephen A., I'll start with you. Considering LeBron's play last night, that awful Game 3, out of character for him, are you buying that excuse that he was tired, potentially sick?
Well, I'm not buying an excuse that he was tired. If he's sick, he's sick. I'm certainly not going to question that. You can be sick. You can be fatigued. And if you're alluding to him being tired because he was sick, that's entirely different than you being tired because of so much mileage on your body and the minutes that you're averaging. He averaged 37 and a half minutes this year. We understand that. Last year, he played in 21 NBA playoff postseason games. This year, at the most, he'd probably play in about 19 because he's at 12 now. And so ultimately, when you consider the rest, you sweep the Indiana Pacers, you sweep the Toronto Raptors, you find yourself in this series against Boston where you'll likely take them out in 5 games. The requisite amount of rest that he's had in this postseason, I think, spans in excess of 24 to 25 days. Considering that, I don't want to hear fatigue. No excuses. No excuses. I don't want to hear that. People try to change the narrative. No excuses. The man, I don't want to hear about fatigue. Not now. Not the way he takes care of his body. Not the physical specimen that he is. And more importantly, not the amount of work he's had to put on his body during this postseason, which is nothing compared to what it's been in the past.
That's an absurd position to take. Hold on a second. You're saying because last year he played in a lot of games, which means that this year he should be more fatigued.
That's not what I'm saying.
Because he's not only a year older and your body starts to break down after a certain point, but also because all those miles you put on your legs in the past actually add up and make it more difficult to do. That's a possible explanation. But if someone says, well, actually, he had a bug, he was actually a little sick, that makes sense, too. It's not an excuse. It's an explanation.
Well, I didn't say it didn't make sense about him being sick.
LeBron James is one of the fastest players in the NBA. And last night, he was one of the slowest players on the court. So he looked tired to me.
Sick.
Whether it's because he was sick or because he has miles or a combination of both or some other reason, that's all fine. There is an explanation, but there's a reason that he looked tired. Something was affecting him physically, I have to believe. Sick is a good enough explanation for me. It doesn't help that you cite the stats. He's played in so many games through the years. That doesn't mean he should continue to be able to do that forever. It means eventually it's going to catch up to him.
I can cite that when 4 days ago we weren't saying any such thing.
Catches up. Well, off a long rest.
It's 4 days?
Off a long rest, they had a week off.
The
Cavs with a week off.
LeBron
is excellent. As he plays more and more, he's a little less excellent because he's old.
God, please. That's ridiculous.
I think you're doing a fine job.
Saying that 4 days ago.
I didn't feel the need to jump in. I thought you were doing a commendable job. I'm not being patronizing. I think this is an example of Max being too smart for his own good. I mean, yeah, right, the minutes are there. LeBron is playing an incredible amount of minutes. By the way, in the playoffs, it's up from that 37. It's up above 40. But you can look at all that evidence, Max, and what are you using it to explain? You're using it to explain one bad game and then a half where he got into foul trouble. If he's slow last night, it's because he's indecisive, which, by the way, he is prone to be from time to time, outthinking the moment, outthinking what can be done. He was not, I have to set aside the sickness, just like Stephen A. If Richard Jefferson says he's sick, then I got to consider the fact that he could have been sick. But some mileage buildup, some physically being tired and therefore compromising his game, I think you're taking a misdone.
You think it's ever going to happen?
Well, yeah, but that's not the debate.
But it's not going to happen now. In other words, it's going to happen at some point. You just dispute that it's happening now, potentially.
Just because something can happen and perhaps even will happen in the future does not mean we've arrived at that moment.
Maybe not.
This is a hard lesson, seems to be, whether it comes to Tom Brady or LeBron James.
Well,
just because it might doesn't mean it is.
It not might. It will certainly happen to everybody. It's the law of entropy, Will. I mean, this is.
But that's not.
There is an aging process.
The law of what?
The world
law
of
entropy.
Systems tend to be breaking apart. Max Kellerman, could you spell it for me, please, for the listeners?
Entropy.
You really are so smart.
Max, just because it will rain someday doesn't mean it's raining right now.
But if Will, if someone comes in and they're all wet and it's the middle of rainy season, you might suspect it's raining outside.
And thus we've arrived at our contention. LeBron's not all wet, man. He may have a little something on his shoulder.
A little damp.
He's had one bad game.
Right. And by the way, it may not be fatigue as a result of Miles. My point is there needs to be an explanation for the fatigue because he was slow last night. The kind of shots he was missing was the result of fatigue. You want to tell me flu bug or whatever? Okay, that's good enough, but he looked tired.
Scored 15 in the fourth quarter. 30 for the 10th time this playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. He was excellent, actually, when all said and done.
When all said and done, the end of the game.
So he's doing something, 7 straight games of 30-plus, okay? He's flat out balling. You're 4 days removed from talking about his greatness and how it compares to his airness and all of this other stuff. And over the course of 2 games, your explanation, did you see him? He looked old. Father Time must have caught up to him, Max. That's what you want to do?
Let me just remind you what we said going into this game. We said we both expected LeBron to have a huge game. I said if he didn't, we are going to have to ask why. Is it fatigue? Is it a Miles buildup? Is it a flu bug or something like that? Sure, okay, but we are going to ask why, and it will be related to fatigue exactly as I predicted. And by the way, as athletes get older, they need more time to recuperate. That's the trend. I mean, that's what happens, guys. I hate to be the one to break this to you. I'm surprised that you haven't noticed this trend throughout all of human history.
We don't understand what the hell you're saying.
All right, we got to leave it there.
Entropy? Is that what entropy?
So good to see you, our Division I athlete. Coming up after the break, I'm not going to let that go. It's too good.
Marvin Lewis, I'm not even joking.
And Stephen A. is not happy with what he had to say. How much did LeBron's subpar games hurt his reputation?